Hello and welcome to Actual Spinster. This is my trusty heat pad once again. Today I just thought I would film my September wrap up. I did manage to do some reading, some of which was like physical reading, so that's nice. I still don't really feel like I'm reading things in the way that I maybe would like to, or able to kind of like talk about them in the way that I would like to, or be like, yeah, like able to listen to them and really take them in the way I would like to. But I'm glad I still got some reading done, so there we go. The first book I read was the final book in the Murder Most Unladylike series by Robin Stephens, which was Death Set Sail. I think it was not one of my favourites, unfortunately. It wasn't as bad as the one that I didn't like that I spoke about, I think in my last wrap up, but I would still say it was one of my least favourites of the series. Partially because it does deal with grief, and like I read those books in order to like get away from a lot of the stuff I'm experiencing in real life, and so then I was just like, well, this isn't fair. And it definitely like dampened my enjoyment of the book and the story. A bit of a decline of enjoyment towards the end for that series, which is a shame because I did enjoy the series a lot, but you know, what can you do? There were definitely like peaks and falls already. I might kind of make a video talking about the whole series or something at some point, but I'm not sure. And I'm kind of like not giving you details of this one because like it is the final book, and like I don't want to kind of spoil anything, and I don't know. I also don't really know how I feel about like the setting. And the next thing I read is sort of, well, I guess it's like a murder related type thing, but I read The Driver's Seat by Muriel Sparg, and this is like I read it in like 2.5 hours or something, like in one go. I mean, you know, it's pretty small, and it's a very like thrilling and interesting and sinister, and I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I think it's pretty good. I think it's like really well crafted, and I think like as a novel it does a lot in a small amount of pages and time. It's very like vivid and interesting. I also kind of low-key feel like there are actually like a lot of connections between it and Mrs. Dalloway, not kind of like direct or particularly obvious, but and like there's like a Miss Kilman character in here, I feel like. But anyway, the thing that troubles me about it is both that it is fairly troubling generally in like a sinister way, but also in that I'm not really sure what it is saying about violence against women. Like, I'm not really sure Muriel Sparg's opinions on that, which makes me feel kind of uncomfortable. It's basically just about this woman called Lisa who has been like working in the same office for years and years, and goes on holiday and is kind of like creating herself as she does so, like a new self, and it's about what happens to her, and it's like quite intense. Also, I wanted to say that I watched this program called The Many Primes of Muriel Sparg, and it was what inspired me to pick out the book in the first place, and it's just on YouTube and it was really good, so I definitely recommend it. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say is that like I have also like low-key been trying to read things for various projects that were happening in September, like Sci-Fi September, Shorty September, and then there was also the Magical Readathon, so hopefully I'll tell you like what I was reading for which at the end once I've talked about everything. But also, I mean, this, you can probably tell, was for Shorty September. The next book I read was actually a reread of a sci-fi book, so obviously it was sci-fi, called Ancillary Justice by Ann Leckie. And I partially reread it because I really would like to keep reading the series, and I also just kind of wanted to be comforted by it. I have actually re-listened to like a bunch of it before, and I think even when I first read it I probably just like immediately restarted listening to it because I just think it's really brilliant. I really love it a lot. I think the characters are incredible, especially Breck. I think that the way the story unfolds is really interesting and compelling, and I just think that the world that's created is super fascinating, and I think the way that it's exploring colonialism is also like quite interesting, and also the way that it's talking about language at the same time and culture, but then also kind of like violence and autonomy and technology and yeah, and gender too. I really like that there's like the main character finds it really hard to tell what people's genders are because she was brought up in a world where like they only use one particular pronoun and one particular gendered form for everybody. I'm really excited to keep reading. I might read the second book in October, we'll see, but hopefully I will read it soon because I think I first read Ancillary Justice like 2 years ago, and I still haven't kept going with the series, even though like I love that book. I gave it 5 stars, and obviously like it made me think a lot, and I think about it a lot too. The next book I read was Exquisite Cadavers by Mina Kandasamy, which is something that I talked about in my Try Chapter tag, and I did say that I wasn't going to read it, but then I did because it was short and stuff. Yeah, I think my same feelings kind of apply as what I said in the Try Chapter tag, which is that like whilst I think what it's doing formally is cool and kind of like right up my street, I think that like emotionally I don't find it particularly enjoyable. I think it's like a clever book, and it has this dual storytelling. It's like a comment kind of like on autofiction or the creation of fiction at all. It's a comment on violence as well, specifically on, I don't know, relationships in some capacity, hope and resistance to like authoritarianism. You know, so like it covers a lot of ground in a very short space. Of course, also like as soon as like Kandasamy, like the smaller font is her talking about her real life and her writing this book, and then also like her relationships with her kid and her partner. And of course, when she's put them in the book, they stop just being real, you know, like they are also fiction too. So there's obviously that kind of play around as well, where you're supposedly writing one narrative of real life and one that you're completely creating yourself, but that's obviously just not what happens. It kind of deconstructs those two different positions by combining them together into a fiction book. As you can tell from the way I talk about it, like I do think it's interesting. It like definitely falls in line with a lot of the stuff I'm kind of excited to be learning about and reading more about and writing about. But yeah, just I felt like it held me quite far away from it, and also like it was very heterosexual. So then I read another book that was in my try a chapter tag, which was Conrad's Fate, which I did say that I wasn't going to read, and I didn't read it in that video, which is like classic me to say one thing and do the complete opposite thing. But I actually found like an audiobook of it online that wasn't abridged, and so I was like, oh, I'll just listen to like the first chapter on the audiobook, and then I just kept going. And actually, like, even since I've read it, I've thought more how charming it is. I definitely think it's the best Chrestomanci book that I've read so far. Yeah, I think Conrad's really cute and I enjoyed it. There are definitely some of the same issues with Diana Wynne-Jones's writing, which is to say that there's like racism and fat phobia that just seems to be like kind of going throughout. I do feel like it was better in this one, and this one is like, the others are from like the 80s I think, and the 70s, maybe late 70s, whereas this one is, well, that's not true, I think that the late 80s, but this one is from like 2000s or something, so I do feel like you can kind of tell a bit more there. I liked seeing the world. I really liked getting to know Millie a bit more. I really like Christopher Chan, Chrestomanci, and I'm kind of sad that there aren't any more books where he's like young-ish in them. But yeah, it was enjoyable, and I've actually just started reading The Magicians of Caprona because I also found an audiobook of that as well, and it sounds really fun. Like, that was actually the one that I thought that I would probably like the most when I watched Rachel's like Kalonadi's video about rereading the Chrestomanci series. And then a book that I just finished in October, but like, you know, in like the early hours of the 1st of October, was Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Actually, I'll say the full title. It was Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge and the Teachings of Plants. And I thought this was like a really beautiful book. It was really educational, which I feel like maybe sounds silly if I say it, but you know, it taught me a lot of stuff that I didn't know. It's not like I know very much about plants or biology, and I find that stuff quite interesting. And I also really liked the way that it focused as well on the role of Indigenous people as caretakers of the world and of the earth and plants, and this really specific focus on like gratitude and reciprocity and mutuality in describing the relationship humans can have with plants and do have, and also kind of talking about trying to dismantle this like Western white supremacist capitalist understanding of plants, understanding of earth and like its resources, and like what can be done to it in order to get it so that we can be as wealthy as possible, you know. I think there were some things that I didn't particularly like that it said around like immigration actually, or sort of like nationhood maybe, not in an indigenous sense, more in like a American sense I guess. But yeah, but otherwise I thought it was really wonderful, and I definitely think people should read it. I think I'm going to try and get my like parents to read it. I think they would like it. And it was read, the audiobook was read by Robin Wall Kimmerer, which was really lovely. She has like a really wonderful voice, and it's really nice to hear like her, I think, really important words and like messages in her own voice rather than like somebody else's. I actually also did read, like physically read a bit more from 2 like short story or like collections. One of them was another Chrestomanci collection, and from this one I read Carol O'Neill's 100th Dream, which was a really fun story, and it included like people going on strike and this like 7 or 12, or I don't know how old she is, but like a kid who dreams, and then they like bottle the dreams and sell them, and she's about to like dream her 100th dream, but then it all goes wrong. So like they ask Chrestomanci for help. And then I also read some of the short stories from Cream Buns and Crime, which is like a collection of some of the short fiction that Robin Stevens has written of within the A Murder Most Unladylike series. So I read The Case of Lavinia's Missing Tie, and The Case of the Blue Violet, and The Case of the Deep Dean Vampire. I think I enjoyed the Deep Dean Vampire one more than the others. I think that's everything I read. So in terms of reading full things, like I said, these two short books were of course for Shorty September, and I'll leave links to it all below. I read Ancillary Justice partially for Sci-Fi September. I did want to read more, but like I did not. And also the Magical Readathon had a couple prompts which I think I managed to complete. So I was taking the like novice path, and I'll leave links as well to the Magical Readathon, but like this one was for Obsidian Falls, which was to read a thriller or a mystery book. I chose Exquisite Cadavers for read a standalone, which is The Mist of Solitude, which is a mood, and then Conrad's Fate Fits for Ruin of the Sky, which is a book featuring ghosts, haunted house, or other supernatural elements, and there's like ghost stuff. So yeah, like not as completely unsuccessful as I thought. I did really want to read my Unquenchable Fire copy, but I obviously didn't get around to it, and as you can probably tell by the fact I'm reading like really short books and also kids books, that's basically what I can handle reading at the moment. But I am slowly getting back into it, I think, and hopefully in October I will also finish Summer Will Show, and then I can like make a wrap up for my failed summer reading project. I had to speak quite fast because my camera is like flashing that it's dying at me, so I hope that I made as much sense as possible, and I hope that you're having a nice day, and I will talk to you another time.